Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hello. It's episode 13, lucky 13 of Screw the Commute podcast. Today's episode is on copywriting, and that's not the Library of Congress copywriting. I'm talking about words that make people buy stuff. This is the number one skill in my entire 40-plus year formal business career that's made me the most money. I was actually writing copy for flyers when I was 10 years old. So this is going to be a must-listen episode if you really want to increase your business income. Hey, you can even start a business doing this for others. Now, let me say right up front, so I don't scare you off with this topic, you don't have to be a great or even a good writer to put out good copy. You don't even have to be able to spell that well. You'll learn in this episode how powerful copywriting techniques are and how important it is for you to learn them if you want to have a successful business. Now, don't forget, check out last episode 12, Cheryl and Robert Rudelek. They're a prolific couple showing us the ins and outs of working as a team, and they even have multiple homes where they work as a team. That's episode 12. All right, our sponsor is Copywriting 901, the fast track to writing words that sell. This is an extremely comprehensive online course, pretty much guaranteed to increase your income in more ways than one. So check that out at copywriting901.com, and that'll be in the show notes. All right, let's get into today's topic. And also let me remind you, I have an entire complimentary webinar on this topic. You'll find that at tomantionwebinars.com. And I go deep into 5 extremely powerful copywriting techniques that anyone can master in a few minutes each, that can dramatically increase your sales. Now, I'll touch on those 5 in this podcast, but you'll probably want to see examples, which I have for you on the webinar. Plus, the webinar has 3 super bonus techniques for those that watch the entire thing. You find that at screwthecommute.com. We'll have a link to where you can see the webinar in the show notes. Okay, why copywriting? Well, the obvious answer is to sell your products and services. That's pretty obvious, right? The other reason that's not so obvious is the techniques you learn will invade all your promotional materials, all your writing, all your audio and video, because you will know the subtle and not so subtle techniques to move people to action. You couldn't possibly afford to pay someone to create all the copy you need written. Not only the amount of money, but the delays and the enormous amount of time lost waiting for others to do this for you. And I'll address that more in a minute. The next reason you ought to do copywriting is because you can learn these techniques easily. They aren't complicated at all, but there are just lots of them. The bottom line is they help you get what you want, which is people to buy your stuff. Next reason is it's a skill you can make money from by writing for other people, in addition to selling your own stuff. See, a lot of people, too lazy to do this, pay fortunes to copywriters, and sometimes if you get good enough, you get a percentage of the sales in addition to getting paid for copywriting. So you can make money with this skill coming and going. And then the last reason is, and this is something one of my students reminded me of, when he put these techniques into play, his refund rates reduced. Well, why is that? And I got to thinking about that, is because if you do a really good job showing people how valuable your product is to them, they are less likely to give it back or to refund it. So that's another great reason why you should do copyright. Now, the next big question is, shouldn't I just delegate this? No, no, unless you're illiterate or you have money and time to burn. Don't. You know what I get sick of? I get sick of all these people telling you, just do what you're good at and delegate everything else. Well, if what you're good at is putting you directly into the poorhouse, all right, maybe you should rethink that idea and increase your business skills. Yeah, you're still going to do what you love, but if you don't have all these other skills, you're going to pay through the nose and make it way, way harder for you to be profitable in a business and make the business last. Now, a lot of people say, well, won't it save time if I just delegate this? No, it won't. Well, let me take that back. If you hire a crappy copywriter, it might save you time, but then you won't get the results. See, a good copywriter is going to interview you for probably hours. And then 2 weeks later, you're going to get a first draft, if you're lucky and it's only 2 weeks. And it's going to be all wrong. And this product is going out under your name, so you have to read every line and what they claim in it, because if you put out something and claim that your product doesn't do, you're the one that's false advertising. You're the one that's going to get chargebacks and refunds and people screaming and giving you bad reviews. So you have to carefully read every line of the draft. You send it back for revisions. All right, another 2 weeks, if you're lucky, you might get it back. And then you got to do the same thing again. You got to read it every word to make, because your name's going to go on this. And you go back and forth maybe 2 or 3 times like that. Is that saving time? I don't think so. Not only are you paying money to have this delay, it could take you a couple months to get your sales letter out. That's just not acceptable in today's atmosphere. You learn this skill, you save all the money, usually thousands of dollars, and you probably could have a really good one for a high-ticket product done in a couple days. Cheap products, I have them done in I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes sometimes, at the worst. This is a really critical skill, and no, you shouldn't delegate it. And the other thing I hear is, well, I'm not a good writer. Well, you're never going to get an A from your English teacher for writing copy. Let me tell you that right up front, all right? This is a whole different type of writing. And you might say, well, Tom, I'm already a good writer. I mean, that's the other thing I hear all the time. Yeah, you might be good at writing novels or how-to information, but these are different techniques that have psychological triggers built in. You'll see that as we go through today, all the things that push people's emotional buttons. That's different from straight how-to writing. That's different from novel writing. Novel writing, yes, you can evoke emotions, but you do it in 500 pages, all right? This is something that's done in a quick read where people have to pull their wallet out, all right? So it's all different. You don't have to be good. You have to be good enough to understand the techniques, rough it out, and then if the worst comes to worst, get an editor in a couple days can smooth it out for you, and we get it up on the web or out printed or whatever you're going to do with it, and sell. That's the point. We don't want to take forever to get this thing done and pay a fortune, and then still it might not work. And then you have to go back for more revisions and all this and that. No, I want it all in-house. All right, so what am I going to cover in these 5 techniques today? Now, there's a little over 30 techniques that go into a sales letter, and I'm going to mention a bunch of them here. Don't feel like you got to write them down or frantically look for them. When you go to the show notes at screwthecommute.com, we'll have a link to where you can go and you can get a whole list of all the elements that go into a sales letter. But I'm going to go into 5 really important ones today. First one, and I'll just tell you what we're going to cover, and then I'll go through a lot of the other elements real quick, and then we'll dig in a little deeper. Zeigarnik technique we're going to go into, or Zeigarnik principle. Scare tactics. That sounds mean. You'll find out that it's not mean at all. Features and benefits, cost comparisons, and the reason why technique. Those are the ones I'm going to go a little bit deeper on today. And the webinar is going to show you a bunch of examples of all of these things. All right, so I'm just going to run through a list of a lot of the elements that go into a sales letter. You have pre-headlines, main headlines, teasers, Johnson boxes, urgency, scarcity, stories, case studies, testimonials, bonuses, guarantees, lift letters, conviction statements, PSs, calls to action, frequently asked questions, top 10 lists, recap paragraphs, signatures, graphics and photos, margin notes and scribbles. Those are all the kinds of elements that you can put into a sales letter. And what I want you to do is make your own checklist as you go through some of my training. And I only want you to eliminate something that doesn't make sense for your sales letter. I don't want you to leave something out just because you never heard of it or you forgot. So one of the goals is for you to have a checklist when you're making a sales letter for one of your products or services that you just go right down and say, oh, well, that doesn't make sense for this product, or this is perfect for this product. And you would expand on that element a little bit more. Now, other things you need to know about sales letters. Well, there's the theory of parallel tracks. This is how you write one sales letter that appeals to different types of people. Some are analyticals, some are skimmers, and you don't want to write for one of them and alienate the other. So we teach you how to do one sales letter that appeals to both types of people. You need to know about the structure of a sales letter, the formatting. You need to know about video sales letters, email sales letters, super short copy, like if you had a little Google AdWords ad or a Facebook ad, autoresponder selling. Now, I covered autoresponders in episode number 10 about shopping carts, but this is an email that goes out automatically based on someone triggering it, getting a freebie, or purchasing something. So you need to have copy in those so it sells for you automatically. Make sure you listen to episode 10 on shopping carts. Again, on shopping carts, we have shopping cart sell-through. This keeps people excited about your product so that they don't abandon the shopping cart without finishing the sale. That's shopping cart sell-through. You need to know about infographics selling. That's where it's a picture with some text on it. And that's a lot of the short attention span people love these things because it's very visual, and there's generators that help you make those like lickety split for almost nothing. You need to know where to find sample sales letters. And we do a thing called, that's perfectly legitimate in the copywriting world, called swipe. So if you see a piece of copy that you really like, you swipe it, and then you collect it, and then you change it to fit you. That's very common. It's not plagiarism unless you take it word for word. But basically, I want you to take the idea of it and then use it for your product or service. And this is every copywriter on earth uses swipe files where they keep stuff that they have seen that they like, and then they adapt it for their purposes. Perfectly legitimate. Then headline formulas. Now, over at the show notes at screwthecommute.com, there'll be a link to a super duper headline generator and copy analyzer that's only about $30. I call it my secret weapon. So you'll see that over at the show notes. And you need to know about a bunch of miscellaneous stuff like horizontal lines, when to use them, when not to use them, white space, navigation, the Columbo technique. You remember, some of you old enough to remember Columbo. He'd always, the bad guy, he'd be talking to him and then he'd leave and then he'd say, oh, just one more thing, right? Right. So that's a technique in copywriting too. There's lots of other little details. Okay, let's get into the techniques I promised you, and we'll go a little bit deeper, keeping in mind that I got tons of examples over at Screw the Commute in the show notes, where it will take you to the webinar that's you can. I mean, I'm telling you, folks, you should put out another 90 minutes to 2 hours to sit down and concentrate on that webinar. That webinar has been seen all over the world, and people went nuts over it because they see how very tiny and easy to implement techniques can really increase their sales. So that's the webinar is called Copywriting 901, the fast track to writing words that sell. All right, first technique is the Zeigarnik technique. Now that's spelled Zeigarnik. Now, Bluma Zeigarnik was a Russian psychiatrist psychologist, and she identified the principle of the human mind, that the human mind cannot stand unfulfilled curiosity. You see this all the time on news shows. They tell you, okay, in the next segment, Britney Spears is going to be on telling you who she kissed, and we'll show you in the next segment. And then the next segment goes by, and the next segment goes by, and the next one goes by, and then they don't show you till the end of the show. And I've had 2 news directors from major TV stations in my program over the years. They both just said, oh yeah, we lie to you. We're just hooking you to stay to the end of the show. All right. So I don't really like that as a cheating kind of technique, but it's very prevalent and it works like crazy. They do it before every commercial. They hook you by causing your curiosity to stay through the commercial to see what they promised you. See? Now, on the internet, we use this quite frequently in emails in subject lines. See, because you can write the best copy on earth and have the best product that's worth $1 million and you're selling it for $2. But if they don't open that email, it doesn't matter how good your product was. So we use that in subject lines. And here's one example, and there's a whole bunch of them in the webinar. But I wrote one for my email magazine that said, the subject line said, I'll never do that again. Okay, now, so 100,000 people see that know me and been on the list for a while, and guaranteed they're thinking, what did Tom do now? All right. So the curiosity kills them, and they got to open it up to see what I did. And it sounds like I messed something up and it hurt me really bad or whatever, but they don't know what it is unless they open the email. See, very powerful psychological technique. And I had a lady watch the webinar the other day, real snooty lady, and she says, well, this would not work with my academic crowd. And I'm thinking, well, you just shut up. Don't give me that. Their people are people. Yeah, maybe you'll use different words for an academic crowd, but they're just as susceptible as anybody. They're not any better or worse than anybody else. They have the same emotional things. So if you give them something they care about, and for instance, you might say to a professor in a college, the fastest way we've ever found to get tenure. All right, so they all want that, so they can't get fired for no matter how shitty they are. Oh, excuse me, I don't want to make this an explicit podcast. So they would open that, see? So it doesn't really matter. It's the psychological principle and the type of words and things that you target that makes this work. Let's see, what else? Inside the email, we use it to increase click-through rates. And there is a trend in emails, there has been for years now, to make them shorter and get people to click through to a web page, because the longer an email is, there's a little sidebar tip for you from somebody that's sent out gazillions of emails over the years. The more words that are in your email, the more likely you accidentally get caught in a spam trigger and your email doesn't get through. So the trend is shorter emails. You use some type of Zygarnik technique. You don't do it every time, it's kind of old, but to get them to click through to the website. So inside, let's say it was for realtors, the inside might say, I found the fastest way to close a customer, and you got to check out this method that I just learned for real estate agents. Boom, they're going to go over there because they're all fighting to try to close the deals with people. See, and they wonder what it is. See, so that's what you want to do, is make people curious of what the answer is, and they will go there. They're even doing it on business cards now. On the back side of a business card, if you go to a networking thing and you give a business card out, it gets home and they throw it in a drawer or they throw it in the garbage, and that's the end of it. But if you, on the back side of it, put a question that uses the Zygarnik technique, and the only way they can find the answer is to go to your website, they will go to your website and they'll keep that card, and that'll be the first thing they try when they get home, if they care about the topic. Again, for the realtors, let's say we found a deal, and the quickest way to get the lowest interest rate for your client, you got to check this out. And so go to realtorsrus.com/interest rates. And they're thinking, oh, that's I got to find out what that is. I'm going to take this home and go right over there, see? So don't waste the back of your business card, leave it blank, or just put some more, nothing on there. Do something that drives them to your website and gets them to maybe opt in for something so you can reach back to them over and over. But this is the Zygarnik technique. And like I said, at the webinar, there's tons more examples for written stuff and for online stuff. So very powerful technique. All right. Next technique is scare tactics. And I don't want you to think this is mean-spirited. When I tell you the definition of a scare tactic, you'll see it's not mean-spirited at all. But fear is a great motivator. And again, this sounds ominous and manipulative, but it really isn't. If you believe in your products, you really want to do things to get people to buy your products. In fact, you're probably saving them trouble from going to some other scammer that's going to rip them off. So you really want to push your own products when you know they're good and they will help people. And a lot of people ask me, if they've seen me speak, and I've done 3,000 engagements around the world. I ask them sometimes, the people that have seen me, I say, what do you think my main goal is when I get on stage? And they'll say, well, you want to sell stuff. And they'll say, well, you want to educate people. Oh, you're really funny, Tom. You want to make them laugh and entertain them. All of those are byproducts of being a good speaker. My main goal, and it really surprises the people that have seen me because I'm not obnoxious up there, I'm not a fear monger, but my main goal is to scare the heck out of them. Scare the heck out of them. Well, that sounds pretty mean, Tom. Well, here's the definition of that. I want that audience to know in no uncertain terms there are consequences of not knowing what I know or having what I'm selling. There's consequences to them of not knowing what I know or having what I'm selling. For a website alone, they could go out and spend $5,000 to $10,000 on a website. If they knew what I knew, you'd have one just as good that you could operate yourself with no maintenance fees on forever, like a big company will charge you, for $100. World class. All right. So if you don't know what I know, you're going to pay $4,900 extra and then an ongoing maintenance fee. That's a consequence of not knowing what I know. Now you've got to stop and think out there, folks. If you really believe in your products that'll do and services that'll do stuff for your audience or your people, your target market, well, stop and think. What are the consequences of not knowing or having what you have? Even if you're a landscaper, I know because I'm terrible at taking care of my yard. All right. I actually got somebody coming over tomorrow to teach me more about it so that it'll look nicer. So I'm paying the consequence that I don't know what they know. So I got patches of, grass missing, and I got big protection dogs here that tear up the grass. And so what to do about all this stuff? So there's consequences. So you have to think and let people know in no uncertain terms, what are the consequences of not knowing what you know or having what you have to sell? And infomercials are great at this. I watched an infomercial where they were selling this thing where you could stand on the ground and hook your garden hose up to it and reach up and clean your gutters out. All right, that's an interesting, cool tool, right? And it was only $20, of course. Put an extra one, and we only pay for shipping, extra shipping and hand. I don't know, those standard infomercial things. But the entire infomercial was people falling off ladders, broken arms, on crutches. The whole thing was scare tactics about buying this $20 thing. It was like a J tube that would hook on your garden hose so you could hold it up and clean your gutters. All right. The whole thing was scare tactics, but those are consequences of getting up on a tall ladder and trying to clean your gutters out. See? So this is very, very powerful. All right. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum. The next item we'll talk about, again, there's examples like crazy on the webinar. The next one is features and benefits. Now, what does that really mean? A feature is what your product is, and a benefit is what the product does for somebody. So I remember years ago, they were selling Core 10 razor blades made from Core 10 steel. So the Core 10 steel is what it is. The benefit of it is that the blades last longer and don't tear your face up. So you have to make a clear distinction between those two things. And I had a disaster one time when I first came out with the Wake 'em Up video professional speaking system. I actually went through it, and on a sidebar note, you want to jot this down or, remember this. The best time to write a sales letter is when you're developing your product. You can certainly do it afterwards, but while you're developing it, you are right in the middle of it. And I take another file, like a Word document, and everything that they either get or they learn from my product, I just jot it down in the Word document. And all of that stuff gets used in the final sales letter. So it's very efficient to do it that way. You can always go back afterwards and do it. So I identified, this is a serious professional speaker training. I identified over 1,000 things that you would learn and that you need to know as a pro speaker to be able to handle all the situations that you run into, how to get the jobs, what happens if there's something before you that's bad or something after you is going to be bad for the group, or if the microphone quits, all of these things. There's just loads of them. So there's 1,000 of them in this course. So I wrote as many of them as I could into a sales letter, put it out, and I sold nothing. And I had never sold nothing, ever. I mean, this was a giant goose egg, and I couldn't believe it. So I had this guy that's a copywriting coach. This is, 20 years ago almost. Look at it, and he said, well, Tom, it looks like there's lots of great things here, but all you put in was features and not benefits. If you're going to mess up with the benefits to the people and forget the features. So I went back and used a certain method that I actually teach and show you how to do it on the webinar. Sorry to push the webinar, folks, but this is so critically important to you. If you're not willing to spend a couple hours to learn this, you're not going to reap the benefits of it. But anyway, there's a certain way I show the features and benefits that he taught me. And every sales letter I do now, I use that same technique for years and years and years. And when I put the same sales letter back to the same group of people, I sold $10,000 worth the first day. And that was when it was a third the price that it is now. So this is really power, features and benefits. Now, let me kind of group the last two. Let's take the last two and talk a little bit about the psychology of this. See, when you combine the scare tactics, those are the consequences, with the plus side of things like the features and benefits, you want a logical person to think the following. I don't want those bad things to happen to me, and I certainly want those good things that'll happen. Hey, I should buy this. That's what you're developing in the mind. You're showing them the bad things if they don't have it, and the good things if they do have it. So a logical person will say, well, that makes sense. I'll buy it if I can afford it. See? And then you want to give them a finance option. That's a whole other thing we'll talk about in another episode, but you make it so that they can afford it. So that's scare tactics, features, and benefits. And then we got the Zygarnik technique. Okay, this next one is kind of fun for me because I love things that are just beautifully illogical, but they work like a charm. And this is called cost comparisons. This sometimes makes no sense at all, but it sells like crazy. All right, so the first one, there's two different ones. The first one I call comparing apples to oranges. Here's an example. For the cost of a cup of Starbucks a day, you could be getting standing ovations around the world. All right, so what you're doing is you're comparing something inexpensive, relatively inexpensive, not that Starbucks is super inexpensive, but relatively inexpensive to what they perceive as an unreachable goal of getting standing ovations around the world. So you're comparing those two things, but they have absolutely no relation to each other. But it works like a charm. For the cost of a cup of Starbucks a day, you could be getting standing ovations around the world. Now, I usually in live sessions ask people, tell me why this is so illogical. And they say, oh, yeah, because coffee has nothing to do with standing ovations. Yeah. I get it. The reason it's so wildly illogical is that I never said for how many days. All right. You could have to pay a cup of Starbucks a day for 10,000 days. All right. But nobody thinks like that. People say, oh man, for only a couple dollars a day, I could learn how to make, big money and speak all around the world. So it makes no logical sense, but it sells like crazy. All right. So that's the first one, comparing apples to oranges. That's a cost comparison. Now, the second cost comparison is comparing something good that's expensive to something cheaper that's even better. All right, you got that? Something good that's expensive compared to something cheap that's even better. So here's an example. For $20,000 a day plus first-class airfare, plus per diem, plus an assistant and all expenses, you could have Tom come into your corporation and teach internet marketing techniques for a day. Or for only $599 a year, you could license his corporate study kit for up to 500 employees, and you can show it to once a week at the sales meetings. You can show it to all the new hires, and it's a wonderful thing. All right. So yeah, I'm happy to go do the thing, and I'll do a great job for them. But it's $20,000 for one day. All right. Or it's going to be $30,000 by the time they're done with it for one day. But the $599, they blow that on a couple luncheons for a client. See? And then they can show the new hires. So you show them all the benefits of the cheaper product. And that's the one you wanted to sell in the first place, because I'm happy to stay at home. I mean, I screwed the commute I never did commute ever, but I like being home. I like talking to you on this podcast. I like selling stuff on the internet. See, so I'd rather license hundreds of companies at $599 a year than to go for a couple days where I got to fight the airfare, and then somebody just got sucked out the window of a plane the other day, and I got these dogs, and they killed a dog. They made it go into the overhead bin. They shipped another dog to Japan that was supposed to go to Louisville, Kentucky on a short hop. I mean, just travel is crazy. So I'm happy to stay home. So so back to this cost comparison, something good that's expensive compared to something cheap that's even better. And I want you to go home and think about this in how you use these techniques for yourself. And again, the webinar will go into more examples, and you'll be able to sit there and work up some for yourself. Okay, the next technique is one of the most powerful there is. This is the last one we'll cover today. The reason why technique. You could not get away from this technique if you were a monk on a mountaintop. This surrounds you. I suggest you probably are hit with this 300 to 400 times a day through various mediums. And just give you an example of this. Haynes Furniture. I live in Virginia Beach. I've been here at the retreat center for 16 years now. Every single weekend since I have been here, Haynes Furniture is going out of business in some fashion. They lost our lease. We have to move out this furniture because the new models are coming. I mean, it's amazing the kinds of things that they can come up with of why they are having a sale. Because the definition of the reason why technique is to justify a price reduction. Now, if I ever ask you, run into me on the street, I'm going to ask you, what's the reason why technique? And you say, it's to justify a price reduction, Tom. Well, why do we want to reduce the price? 2 reasons. People love sales. That's the first reason. And the second, people are greedy. They love to get over on you. If you're stuck because you're overstocked, this, that, the other, they feel like they're taking advantage of you. And I hate to have that kind of view of society, but that's been proven a gazillion times by copywriters in the whole world, all right? So this is really powerful. So you want to justify a price reduction so people will think that they can take advantage of you and they will buy. This is so powerful. I even made fun of this one time and made a fortune. Now stop and think about this one. I had an ebook clearance sale. An ebook clearance sale. Now, I mocked up on the website as if it was an automobile sale. I put flags, I put porta potties, dancing hot dogs, and just stupid stuff because I'm mocking this reason why technique. And so I said, the boss says, move them out. The old electrons are clogging up my computer and the new ones are coming in. And he says, if we don't get them out of here this weekend, we're all going to get fired. And so I'm just totally making a farce. But guess what, folks? I sold $9,600 of half-price ebooks on that one day. That's how powerful this is. I was making fun of it, and it still works, all right? So that's the reason why technique. It's one of the most powerful. It's to justify a price reduction. Now, there is one exception to when you don't need to use the reason why technique, and that is when the world is expecting a sale. Just stop and think of all the times people expect a sale. President's Day, 4th of July, back to school, Halloween. What else? I said President's Day, right? So any New Year's, so Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all of these times are when people expect a sale. And some of them you can just generate. So you could think of your anniversary when you started your business. I mean, who knows when they really started their business if they've been around for a while, right? So just make up a day and do it every year. That's your anniversary sale. Have a birthday sale. It's my birthday sale. It's, it's celebrating my new baby. Whatever it is, you don't have to have a reason why if there's a world would expect a sale. So that's the exception to the reason why. Now, you need to learn this skill. If you refuse, you are leaving enormous amounts of money on the table and either spending enormous amounts of money to get others to do it for you, or it's just not getting done at all, which is another losing strategy. So what holds people back from learning this skill? Well, the belief that it's too expensive to get this education. And I'm going to blow that reason out of the water right now. When you see how inexpensive my course is, I actually paid $4,500 for a course just on headlines. $4,500. Well, my course is 15 times cheaper than that and covers 30 times more. You'll be able to do all the stuff you need for printed sales letters, written. You'll be able to do infographics. You'll be able to do Facebook ads. You'll be able to do any kind of ads you can think of, video ads, audio ads, all of that. So it's not too expensive. Another excuse I get is lack of time. Well, I already showed you how hiring it out will take more time every single time you need copy than taking some time now and saving a fortune of time and money forever. The other one is lack of writing skill. Well, as I told you before, none of these elements use fancy writing. And once you know the concepts and you're able to rough out the sales copy for your product, hey, if you feel you need to, you can get inexpensive editors to go over and smooth things out for you very quickly. And I'm suggesting that after you do a few sales letters and get some results, you'll probably skip the editor. The bottom line is it's the number one skill that can bring the most money into your business immediately. It's not that hard to learn. The time you take to learn it will pay off for the entirety of your business career. It'll save you tens of thousands of dollars. You can hire yourself out if you really start enjoying it to others and make a lot of extra money. And it will most likely earn you millions of extra dollars over the course of your business. So get busy. Set some time aside to watch and take notes on the webinar, Copywriting 901. You can go directly to it at tomantionwebinars.com, or you can check the show notes at screwthecommute.com, and it'll have links to everything that you need. Then there's one other secret weapon I mentioned before. It's only about $30, and it will ask you a few questions about your product and spit out tons of headlines and subheadings, and it'll even give you its opinion. This is like, I don't know, artificial intelligence or whatever. It'll give you its opinion on the best ones that you should try first based on the answers you gave it. And I think it's only about $30. Or If you're ready to roll right now, you can go directly to copywriting901.com. You can get a lifetime membership and start your copywriting training today. It'll be one of the most powerful things you could ever do if you want to succeed big time in business. All right, this has been Lucky episode 13. In the next episode, I'll be interviewing superhero Barbara Cookson on what it's like to be a superhero professional speaker who used to be a sedentary and overweight person. I can't wait to see the great copy you learn to write. I'll catch you on the next episode.